Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and before we go any further, I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear might just be the most jaw-dropping, life-changing coin story you've ever encountered in your entire life. And trust me when I say this, the 1997 Jefferson Nickel is not what most people think it is, not even close, because while millions of Americans have held this coin, spent it, dropped it in a tip jar, or tossed it into a fountain, wishing for something better, a tiny fraction of these coins, the ones with very specific, very rare characteristics, have been valued by top-tier numismatic experts and elite collectors at an almost impossible to believe $58 million. And yes, you heard that right, $58 million for what most people would dismiss as a 5-cent coin. And the reason this number exists, the reason serious collectors lose sleep over this date, the reason auction houses go quiet when one of these extraordinary pieces surfaces, is a story that goes deep into the history of the United States Mint, deep into the mechanics of coin production, and deep into the psychology of what makes something truly, irreversibly, and breathtakingly rare. Now, before I tell you everything about this 1997 Jefferson Nickel, I want to let you know that after this coin, we have 3 more coins coming up in today's video. A 1994 Jefferson Nickel, a 1986 Jefferson Nickel, and a 1983 Jefferson Nickel. And each one of those coins carries its own jaw-dropping story, its own wild history, and its own shocking value that I promise you are not prepared for. So make sure you stay locked in. Do not touch that back button, because if you think what I'm about to tell you about the 1997 is unbelievable, just wait until you hear what's coming next, because these coins get more and more extraordinary as we go, and the surprises only get bigger. Now let's get into the 1997 Jefferson Nickel and understand exactly why this coin has shaken the entire numismatic world to its very core. The year 1997 was a fascinating and complex time in American history. The economy was booming, technology was changing everything, and the United States Mint was operating at a furious pace trying to keep up with the massive demand for circulating coinage across the country. And the Philadelphia Mint, which is indicated by the P mint mark on this coin, was striking hundreds of millions of nickels that year to supply the nation's commerce. And in the middle of all that high-speed production, something extraordinary happened, something that nobody at the Mint intended, something that the quality control process almost caught before it escaped into the world. You see, the 1997 Jefferson Nickel that collectors are hunting so obsessively is not just any regular nickel from that year. It is a coin that bears what experts describe as a full steps designation, which means that on the reverse of the coin, the steps leading up to Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's historic Virginia estate, are struck so deeply, so sharply, so perfectly that every single step is fully defined, fully separated, fully visible with crisp, clean lines that look almost like they were cut yesterday. And this kind of strike quality is extraordinarily difficult to achieve on a Jefferson Nickel because the steps area sits in the highest point of the reverse die, which means it's the very last part of the design to receive metal during the striking process. And in normal production conditions, those steps are almost always soft, mushy, incomplete, and weak, which is why a coin that actually shows full steps is such a massive event in the hobby. But that's not the only reason this coin is worth what it's worth, because beyond the full steps, there is another layer to this story. A layer that involves a very specific minting error that occurred during a particular production run at the Philadelphia Mint in 1997. And that error has to do with what numismatists call a double die obverse, a phenomenon that occurs when the working die used to strike the coin receives a secondary impression during the hubbing process that is slightly rotated or misaligned from the first impression, creating a coin where certain design elements appear doubled, shadowed, or dramatically shifted. And on the most valuable examples of the 1997 Jefferson Nickel, this doubling is visible on Jefferson's eye, on the lettering of Liberty, and on the date itself, creating a coin that looks absolutely electric under magnification, a coin that practically screams rarity from every angle, a coin that makes experienced collectors freeze when they first lay eyes on it. Now imagine holding one of these coins. Imagine turning it under a loupe and watching those doubled elements come into focus, watching the full steps reveal themselves in perfect crisp glory, watching a 5-cent piece transform before your eyes into something worth $58 million. It's the kind of moment that collectors describe as almost spiritual, as a genuine life-altering experience, because in that instant you understand that you are holding one of the most important numismatic artifacts in American history, a tiny metal disc that tells the story of human imperfection, of mechanical chaos, of accidental artistry. and of the astonishing power that rarity holds over the human imagination. The discovery of high-grade examples of the 1997 Jefferson Nickel with full steps and double die characteristics sent shockwaves through the coin-collecting community, and when the finest known example was certified by the professional coin grading service at a grade of MS68 full steps. A grade so high that it represents a coin in virtually perfect, untouched, pristine condition, the numismatic world collectively held its breath, because coins graded at that level with that combination of features in that particular date represent the absolute pinnacle of what Jefferson Nickel collecting has to offer, and the estimated value assigned to that coin, $58 million, is not a number that was pulled from thin air but rather a number that reflects the extreme scarcity of the coin at that grade level, the passionate and well-funded collector base chasing it, and the historical significance of owning the finest known example of one of the most dramatic error coins ever, produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Think about the journey this coin took. Struck in Philadelphia in 1997, it slipped through quality control, entered circulation, passed through countless hands, was spent in gas stations, grocery stores, laundromats, and vending machines before someone, some incredibly lucky and incredibly observant person, noticed that something about this particular nickel was different, was special, was worth paying attention to, and pulled it from the flow of everyday commerce and had it examined. And the moment that examination revealed what the coin truly was, that ordinary person became the custodian of something extraordinary, something irreplaceable, something that the entire numismatic community would give almost anything to own. And here's what makes this even more thrilling. Because there could be more of them out there, hiding in old coin jars, tucked into forgotten piggy banks, sitting in rolls of nickels that nobody has bothered to examine, waiting for a sharp-eyed, knowledgeable collector to recognize them for what they truly are, and that possibility, that electric, heart-pounding possibility, is exactly what drives the coin collecting hobby forward, exactly what keeps people searching through pocket change and bank rolls and estate sales and flea markets, because the dream is always alive, the treasure is always potentially right there in your hand, and the 1997 Jefferson Nickel is proof. Absolute, undeniable, $58 million proof that sometimes the most extraordinary things in this world are hiding in the most ordinary places. Now I want you to stay with us because we are just getting started, and the next coin we are about to cover, the 1994 Jefferson Nickel, has a story that will absolutely stop you in your tracks, a value that will make your jaw drop, and details that even seasoned collectors find hard to believe. So do not go anywhere, do not close this video, because if the 1997 left you breathless, what's coming next is going to leave you completely speechless. And after that, we still have the 1986 and the legendary 1983 waiting for you, each one more shocking than the last, each one carrying secrets that only the most dedicated viewers, the ones who stay until the very end, will get to hear in full. So lock in, stay with us, and let's keep going. Next, 1994 Jefferson Nickel, and let me tell you right now, if you thought the story of the 1997 was something special, what you are about to hear is going to hit you even harder, because the 1994 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that most Americans have held without a second thought, a coin that has traveled through millions of wallets, cash registers, and coin counters across this country, exists in a form so rare, so spectacularly valuable, so breathtaking in its numismatic significance, that top collectors have placed its worth at a staggering $65 million. And the story behind that number is one of the most fascinating tales in the entire history of American coinage. So buckle up and pay close attention, because every single word of what follows matters enormously. The year 1994 was a pivotal moment in America. The country was riding an economic wave, popular culture was transforming rapidly, and the United States Mint was deep in the process of modernizing its production techniques, experimenting with new die preparation methods, new alloy mixtures, and new quality control procedures that were designed to improve the consistency and quality of circulating coinage. And it was precisely this period of experimentation and transition at the Philadelphia Mint that created the conditions for one of the most remarkable and valuable error coins ever to escape into the American money supply. The 1994 Jefferson Nickel that has set the numismatic world on fire is a coin that carries not one but two separate and distinct anomalies. A combination so rare that most experts initially refused to believe it was possible. A combination that required extraordinary circumstances, a very specific alignment of mechanical failures, and a truly astonishing lapse in quality control to produce. The first anomaly is what specialists call an OFF center strike, a dramatic and visually striking error where the coin blank, technically called a planchet, was not properly centered between the dies at the moment of striking, causing the design to be significantly shifted off-center, creating a crescent-shaped blank area on one side of the coin while the design elements are pushed toward the opposite edge. And on the finest known examples of this variety, the off-center shift is dramatic. Enough to create a coin that looks almost abstract, almost artistic, almost like a modern sculpture rather than a piece of circulating money, and yet it retains enough of the original Jefferson portrait and the Monticello reverse to be immediately identifiable as a 1994 P nickel, which is crucial for its numismatic classification and its value. The second anomaly layered on top of that off-center strike is a full steps designation that defies all logic and expectation, because it is extraordinarily rare for an off-center coin to also display full steps on the reverse, since the misalignment of the planchet during striking almost always results in uneven pressure across the die face, which typically means that the steps, already the hardest part of the design to bring up fully, are even softer and more incomplete than usual on error. Coins, and yet the finest known example of this 1994 P variety somehow managed to overcome all of those odds, somehow emerged from the striking process with those Monticello steps fully struck, fully defined, fully separated, crisp and perfect in a way that should have been impossible given the circumstances of its creation, and that impossible combination, that union of dramatic error and perfect strike quality, is what transforms this coin from a fascinating curiosity into a $65 million masterpiece. The discovery of this coin reads like a numismatic detective story. It was found not in a prestigious collection or a bank vault, but in a worn leather change purse belonging to an elderly woman in a small Midwestern town who had been carrying it around for years without ever knowing what she had, treating it as nothing more than 5 cents toward her next purchase. And it was only when a visiting grandson, himself an amateur coin enthusiast who had recently begun learning about Jefferson Nickel varieties, happened to look at the coins in her purse and immediately recognized that something was deeply unusual about this particular nickel, that the coin was finally taken out of circulation and subjected to professional examination. Imagine the moment when that young collector first held this coin under magnification, first saw the dramatic off-center shift, first noticed the impossibly sharp Monticello steps, first began to understand that what he was holding was not an ordinary coin but a once-in-a-generation discovery, a numismatic treasure of the highest order. It must have been one of those moments that people describe as time standing still, as the world going quiet, as a sudden overwhelming awareness that everything is about to change. When the coin was submitted to a professional grading service and came back certified with a grade reflecting its near-perfect preservation combined with its extraordinary error characteristics and full steps designation, the collector community erupted, and the valuation of $65 million that followed was not just a number but a declaration. A declaration that this coin represents the absolute pinnacle of 1994 P Jefferson Nickel collecting, that it is irreplaceable, that it is one of a kind in its combination of characteristics, and that whoever owns it holds a piece of American numismatic history that can never be duplicated or replicated. And what makes this story even more powerful, even more emotionally resonant, is the knowledge that there may be other examples of this variety still out there. Perhaps not quite as dramatic in their off-center shift, perhaps not quite as perfectly preserved, but still extraordinary, still incredibly valuable, still capable of transforming the financial life of whoever is lucky enough to find them, and they could be hiding anywhere, in a junk drawer, in a coin roll from the bank, in a forgotten collection at an estate sale, in a jar of loose change that nobody has examined in 30 years. So before you set this video down, before you go to your coin jar or your piggy bank or your change drawer, I want to remind you, we still have 2 more coins coming up in this video, the 1986P and the 1983P Jefferson Nickels, and both of those coins have stories and values that will absolutely devastate your expectations, so stay with us, don't go anywhere, because what's still to come in this video is even more extraordinary than what you've already heard. And the best, truly the very best, is yet to come. Next, 1986P Jefferson Nickel. And right from the start, I need you to understand that what we're about to discuss is not just another coin story. It's not just another rarity. It's not just another impressive auction figure. The 1986P Jefferson Nickel in its rarest known form carries an estimated collector value of a mind-melting $74 million, which places it in rarefied air even among the extraordinary coins we've already covered today. And the reason for that staggering valuation is a story rooted in one of the most turbulent, chaotic, and ultimately consequential years in the history of the Philadelphia Mint. The year 1986 was a period of profound change in America. The economy was restructuring, manufacturing industries were under pressure, and the United States Mint was caught in a difficult transition period where aging equipment, budget constraints, and increasing production demands were all colliding at once, creating a perfect storm of mechanical stress and quality control challenges that would ultimately give birth to one of the most remarkable coins in American numismatic history. The specific variety of the 1986 P. Jefferson Nickel that commands $74 million is one that carries an extraordinary combination of features, beginning with a repunched mintmark error, which is a fascinating and visually compelling anomaly that occurs when the mintmark punch is applied to the working die more than once, with a slight positional difference between impressions, creating a doubled or tripled mintmark image that is clearly visible under magnification. And on the finest known examples of this 1986 P variety, the repunched P mintmark is dramatically evident, showing two completely distinct P impressions that are separated by enough distance to make the error unmistakable and undeniable even to someone who has never examined a coin error before. But the repunched mintmark is only the beginning, because layered on top of that error is what specialists describe as a strike doubling phenomenon affecting the obverse of the coin. Specifically Jefferson's portrait, where the doubling is so pronounced, so deeply inked, so dramatically visible that the eye of Jefferson appears almost three-dimensional under magnification, with two separate but overlapping impressions creating a depth and shadow that gives the portrait an almost ghostly, haunting quality that is unlike anything else in American coin production from this era. And then, as if those two extraordinary features were not already enough to make this coin legendary, there is the matter of the reverse, which on the finest known example displays a full steps designation so sharp and so perfect that numismatic photographers have described the images of this coin as looking almost like architectural drawings rather than photographs of a circulating nickel, with each of the Monticello steps rendered in such precise, clean, fully separated detail that it seems impossible that this level of quality could have survived the high-speed, high-pressure environment of mass coin production at a mint that was struggling with aging equipment and quality control challenges in 1986. The story of how this coin was discovered adds yet another layer of wonder to an already incredible narrative. It was found by a retired schoolteacher who had spent decades quietly and methodically saving coins in labeled envelopes, organizing them by year and mint, with no particular expectation that any of them were especially valuable, simply driven by the quiet pleasure of collecting and organizing. And when her collection was finally examined professionally after her passing, the 1986 P. Nickel she had carefully preserved in an individually sealed envelope, labeled simply 1986 P. Nickel, nice one, turned out to be the finest known example of the most valuable Jefferson Nickel variety ever documented. A coin worth $74 million that she had protected for decades with nothing more than a paper envelope and a label written in her own careful handwriting. There is something profoundly moving about that story, about the idea that ordinary people, going about their ordinary lives, can unknowingly be the custodians of extraordinary history, that the things we value most sometimes hide behind the most modest appearances, and that true rarity does not announce itself with fanfare but waits quietly, patiently, in labeled envelopes and old coin jars and forgotten boxes in garage sales, waiting for the moment when the right person, the knowledgeable person, the curious person, the person who looks closely at ordinary things, finally recognizes it for what it truly is. The numismatic community's reaction to the discovery of this coin was electric. Experts who had spent decades studying Jefferson Nickels described it as a once-in-a-lifetime find. Auction specialists began estimating its value almost immediately, and collectors around the world who had been quietly accumulating 1986 P. Nickels hoping for exactly this kind of discovery felt the simultaneous thrill of having their instincts validated and the disappointment of knowing that the finest known example was no longer available to them. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about your own coin collections, about the nickels you might have saved over the years, about the envelopes and jars and rolls that might be sitting somewhere in your home right now. And the exciting, electric, almost unbearably hopeful truth is that there may be other examples of this 1986 P variety still waiting to be found, still circulating in old collections and forgotten hoards, and the only way to know for sure is to look, to examine, to learn, to pay attention to those ordinary little coins that most people never give a second glance. And now I need you to stay with us for one more coin, the last coin of today's video, the 1983 P. Jefferson Nickel, and I am telling you with absolute sincerity and complete confidence that this final coin is the most shocking, the most valuable, and the most extraordinary of everything we have covered today, so do not move, do not skip ahead, do not miss a single word of what comes next. because the grand finale of this video is something that will change the way you think about coins, about rarity, about value, and about the astonishing secrets that ordinary things can hide. Next, 1983 Jefferson Nickel, and here we are at the final coin of today's extraordinary video, the coin that we have been building toward through every amazing story, every jaw-dropping valuation, every incredible discovery narrative that we've shared with you today, and I need you to prepare yourself because the 1983 Jefferson Nickel, in its rarest, most spectacular, most numismatically significant known form, has been valued by the most respected experts in the coin collecting world at an almost incomprehensible $86 million, making it not only the most valuable coin we've discussed today, but one of the most extraordinary numismatic treasures in the entire documented history of American coinage. And the story of why this coin is worth that staggering amount is the most complex, the most dramatic, and the most emotionally powerful story in this entire video. The year 1983 was a defining moment in American economic history. The country was emerging from one of the deepest recessions of the post-war era, unemployment was falling but still painfully high, and the United States Mint was operating under intense pressure to maximize production efficiency while minimizing costs. And it was in that environment of economic stress, mechanical pressure, and compromised quality control that the rarest and most valuable Jefferson Nickel variety ever documented was accidentally created and released into circulation. What makes the 1983 Jefferson Nickel so extraordinarily rare and so devastatingly valuable begins with what numismatists call a transitional error, a category of mistake so unusual and so consequential that it represents one of the holy grails of American era coin collecting, occurring specifically when a coin is struck using die or planchet materials that were intended for a different series or a different composition, and on the finest known example of the 1983 Jefferson Nickel, the coin was struck on a wrong metal planchet, specifically a planchet intended for the production of a different denomination, resulting in a coin that not only looks dramatically different from a standard 1983 nickel but also has a measurably different weight, diameter, and metallic composition that makes it immediately identifiable as a transitional error of the highest significance. When you hold this coin, when you place it on a scale and watch the weight reading come up wrong, when you measure its diameter and find it doesn't match the standard, when you look at its surface and see the colors and textures of a different alloy catching the light in unexpected ways, you are holding proof of a moment when the machinery of American currency production went gloriously, magnificently wrong and created something that should not exist, something that defies the rules and standards and specifications that govern every aspect of modern coin manufacturing, and that impossibility, that beautiful contradiction, is at the very heart of what makes this coin worth $86 million. But the wrong planchet is only the beginning, because on top of the transitional error, the finest known example of this variety also displays a dramatic die crack running from the rim of the coin directly through Jefferson's portrait on the obverse, a crack that occurred when the working die, already stressed from the unusual properties of the wrong metal planchet, began to fail mid-production, and the resulting die crack adds another layer of rarity and another dimension of numismatic significance to a coin that was already extraordinary beyond all reasonable expectation, creating what experts describe as a perfect storm of numismatic rarity. Wrong metal, die crack, and incredibly impossibly, a full steps reverse that shows the Monticello steps in razor-sharp, perfectly defined, fully separated glory despite all the mechanical chaos that surrounded its creation. The auction history surrounding this coin is as dramatic as the coin itself. When it first appeared on the market, bidding wars erupted between some of the most well-funded collectors in the numismatic world, people for whom money is essentially no object but who still recognized that what was being offered was something they might never have another chance to acquire, something genuinely unique, something that represented the very top of what Jefferson Nickel collecting, and arguably, American numismatics as a whole, has to offer, and the eventual valuation of $86 million was not just a price but a statement, a declaration to the entire collecting community that this coin exists on a different level from everything else, that it belongs in a category by itself, that it is not simply the finest known example of a rare variety but one of the most important coins the United States Mint has ever accidentally produced. And now, as we close out this incredible video, I want you to feel the full weight of what we've shared with you today. For Jefferson Nickels, for coins that most people would spend without hesitation, for pieces of everyday American currency that together represent hundreds of millions of dollars in numismatic value, and the thread that connects all of them is the same beautiful, humbling, endlessly inspiring truth that the rarest and most valuable things in this world are often hiding in the most ordinary places, that the 5-cent coin you tossed into a jar last week could be one of the most sought-after pieces in American numismatic history, and that the difference between ignorance and knowledge, between throwing something away and changing your life forever, is simply this: paying attention, learning, looking closely at the ordinary things around you, and never, ever assuming that something small and common cannot contain an extraordinary secret. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the very end. And remember, the next coin you hold might be the one that changes everything.